Very, very interesting ways that your brain works. There's two ways that we can describe your brain. I'm going to use both of them because they're both useful. We can talk about the front mind and the back mind. Okay? So the back mind is more visual, more imaginative. It is the posterior world. Now the front mind, and you can see the boyo's head up here, this is actually where a lot of where you get the concept of rationality, the self, the active mind. The back mind is a lot more observant. Even in, for example, with your language centers, you've got the Broca's area, which creates words and moves your mouth. And then you've got the Wernicke's area, which understands words, which perceives words. So you could get a head injury and lose the ability to speak, but you could still understand. You could get the opposite. You could lose the ability to understand words, but still speak. Like you could lose the ability to read, but still talk. Or write even. It's very, very interesting. So your brain is not like a straightforward thing. It has zones. It has areas. It has parts of it, you know. And then when you look at different brain tasks, when you're just talking in a rational, conscious way, to back up everything we're talking about here, it seems that you don't actually engage that much of your brain. You just tend to have like an over and back jargon talk that uses a lot of your front mind that's in control of the language, that type of thing. But then if you had this rich, vivid, story-told, imaginative talk, it would actually trigger more parts of it. If you sit down with someone and say, visualize a banana growing big and small, you know, this would turn on a lot of parts of your brain. It would spark your brain up. You can see it here. This is the brain scan. You have all these parts of your brain working together in unison. So do you know that meme? Oh, we only use 10% of our brain. Probably a bit crap. Like, it's probably not true. We tend to use our brain in very complex ways. It's a very complex thing. But there is a little bit to it, in the sense that there are parts of our brain that we don't use as much as other parts. Or maybe there's modes or ways that we could use our brain that would be more integral, more complete, more whole. Our more imaginative way of looking at things. For example, people write books about philosophy, about theories, about ideas, and we might make the mistake of making a very front brain, very, rational, jargon, difficult to read, dense. Interesting stuff, very, very useful, very, very cool. But it's nothing compared to the attraction, the understanding, the completeness, the wholeness, the comprehensiveness of something like the Red Book, of Dante's Inferno, of Zarathustra. It's like a superior form of delivering these ideas. It's a very, very interesting thing. And maybe it's down to the fact that it uses a superior amount of your brain. It uses more of your brain. Back here is where you store all your visual processing. Do you see this big red bit, this big green bit? And if you're just listening on a podcast, basically the whole arse of the brain is just sparked up with this big red blob and this big green blob, because that's where you process a lot of your visuals. And so when you're imagining, you turn on the visual mind. You close your eyes and you imagine, your visual mind turns on a huge part of your brain. It's very, very tied to your memories. So this becomes extremely interesting, because these massive parts of your back of your mind connect to your front of your mind, make things more vivid, make things more engaging. And so to go back to that idea of the dream, like, you look at what the dream does when you're sleeping, the technical aspects to it are fascinating. Your brain, in order to create the dream experience, turns off certain parts and amps up other parts. It amps up the visual associative cortex. It amps up that part of images. It amps up that rich memory-driven experience. It turns off the prefrontal cortex. Your rational thought dies, the speaking dies, that type of the sort of mind dies, and then obviously the deep emotional brain is absolutely charged. The memory brain, the emotional brain, the social brain, these are all very, very tied, are richly charged. And so this is what's going on in the dream. You're switching out of rational mainstream media, academia, intellectuals in the coffee shop talking to each other, and you're moving into the visual Hollywood-like, drama, story told, and rich way of seeing things. And that's why it comes that way. And remember what I said earlier, during the day you walk around with this conscious mind, and it feels like you have this sort of reality, but there's this other part that does actually seem to be nearly maybe underneath or separate or behind or something like that, or everywhere, but like hidden outside the bubble or something like that. And it whispers in, but you usually block it out because it's painful. It's too charged with emotions. And now we have a very, very clear picture showing you that there is a visual set of your mind that's turned on when you dream, that turns on, that's very connected to your emotional. That's what a dream is, an emotional vision. And it's charged. And we ignore this. It's a huge part of our brain. If you're seeing this picture, it's like the center of your head and the most of the back of your head. And we don't take it serious because we want to be the front of our head. because that's what our conception of ourself is. And this is not something that's very, very well, and not very, very grounded. Like our conception of ourself is not something that is as valuable, first of all, as we think, nor as eternal, nor as persistent. If you want to think about the concept Jung says of the ego, there's good evidence against it being as useful as we treat it. You know, our conscious mind, and it's one thing to understand the jargon, but it's another thing to actually like be able to beat it. Our conscious mind gets trapped in its egotistical modes of thinking. But we look at the science of something people study a lot called flow. This is what we call creativity, and brainwaves are a part of it, as they're saying. But listen to this. Flow is also caused by transient hypofrontality, lovely jargon word, the temporary deactivation of the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is that part at the front, you know, it's that that first bit, the big chunk above your head. Gives you rational thought, gives you personality, gives you a lot of brilliant things. It's very important, but it also creates our conception of ourself. The prefrontal cortex is part of our brain that houses most of our higher cognitive functions. Why does our sense of self disappear in flow? Because self is generated by large portions of the prefrontal cortex, and with large swaths of this area no longer open for business, that sense vanishes completely. Oh my God, what? So when we're in these high-level athletic moments, or high level of flow with music, high level of creativity, our prefrontal cortex goes into a trance and turns off, in a sense. It dulls, and it allows these other parts of our brain to take over. What the hell is happening? What? So the parts of us when we're at like peak performance, the best of our human existence, is actually non-egotistical. It is anti-ego. And isn't that what they're always talking about? That it's turning off the conscious mind. And we are making this mistake of saying the conscious mind and its demand for reason is supreme over all these other parts of the mind. But now it's starting to subvert itself, because the deep science is starting to show that this part of our mind isn't even present when we're in the absolute excellence of creativity. This meme is absolutely true. and that's something you can't just dismiss. That's something you can't just dismiss, because it's the same idea with something like a dream. And then it explains a lot of why we are attracted to people who just throw the scientific consensus to the wind and say, I'm going to write a red book. Because it's like, all right, well, it just flows out of me. The muse hits me. I just get the visions. I'm presenting a dream, and it tends to have immense power. And of course, like a high performer who's in flow, Conor McGregor describes often when he's fighting, it feels like an outer body experience. Your self turns off and you're almost like watching yourself from above. So do you remember what I said about the dream? You have that conscious mind that turns off when you go to sleep, and then you'll realize there's this very silent, strange witness that's almost like at the back. And then the dreaming mind comes. So why does he feel like he's watching himself from above? Is that because he starts to identify with his true self? I don't know, man. I'm just a boyo. I'm not here to say anything too crazy, but you can think about these things. And so this is a big deal. This is a big deal, a non-trivial thing that you cannot dismiss. This has huge consequences for creativity. For example, during flow, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain charged with self-monitoring and impulse control, goes quiet. The DLPFC is our inner critic, the voice of doubt and disparagement. As a result, with this area deactivated, we're far less critical and far more courageous, but augmenting our ability to imagine new possibilities and share those possibilities with the world. So the inner critic that talks and thinks and is rational and knows everything and is causing you anxiety and putting you down all the time, when you hit flow, when you hit the highest version of performance, the ultimate creative state, it turns off and you actually perform better. Signaling that this is, first of all, not too intelligent. It just talks a lot. And it gets in the way of you being your best self. I don't know, man. I don't know. And so Jung writes a book about this that predicts the future, in theory. Although it's like I wouldn't want to say anything that ruins my career. And yeah, and people say he's a bit irrational. Who knows? Well, look, here's good hard science giving him kudos. So let's see what we're talking about here a bit more. And so this idea of the bigger brain, the united brain, is something that we need to focus on. Here's an example of people taking LSD. Same thing. The brain lights up. You know, this is like steroids to going to the gym. Perhaps there's ways that we can access this full brain experience without needing drugs. So that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this channel going forward, because I believe it exists. But at the same time, if you want to experience this stuff, and I've done LSD, I've tried it, you can just take the psychedelics and things will happen. It will switch your chemistry in a way that makes you have these experiences. It's steroids. It's not in any way a long-term solution or even that advisable. Like, you can do it a gentler way by just simply allowing these little portals. When these portals appear, when that strong emotion appears, take it. When that dream appears, go with it. See what happens. And when these visions appear, follow them. You know, that can work just as good. But if you were stuck in the materialistic mind, you need to bully it out of the way. This can work, and I'll talk about my story with that stuff later. But let's talk about this a little bit more. Let's talk about how I understand the front brain and the back brain, and then I'm going to talk about the left brain, the right brain, because that's another way you can look at this angle. So I often talk about jargon. Steph, why do you hate jargon so much? It's like, I'm sorry. Now, you see what I'm saying here is that this front brain is not your friend. This is the thing that's hurting you, you know? Now, this is very important to understand, is that this front brain is not your friend. It's also not your enemy. It's just a tool. It's like the computer. It's like the phone. Phone is not the source of my personality or reputation or health or what I treat it like. Oh, the most important thing in the world, the internet. You know, the machine is not me. The machine is something that serves me, that gets populated by my spirit. I make the internet worthwhile because I inject my human spirit into it. The machine has no power. There's no purpose. Now, the thing is, what happens with our conscious mind, the front mind, the dorsal front prefrontal cortex, whatever you call it, is we get caught up with identifying as it, the ego, as Jung described, and you're starting to see the neuroscience behind this. And it has this habit of creating the jargonite world. It needs to turn everything into categories that it can understand. It needs to have control. It wants to make sense of the world. And so it builds this bubble or this palace of jargon around itself. And it makes itself the little king. I'm in control. I know everything. I am this and this and this and this and this. And that might be, I'm a piece of shit. I hate myself. I hate everything about myself. But at least I'm in control. You will actually stay in a comfort zone where you're anxious and depressed, as long as it makes you feel you're in control. It's so strange, but it's true. And as we said, the best part of you, the part where you're using your whole brain, the flow part of you, turns this off, signaling that this is great, but not exactly useful, not exactly supreme. It needs to be tamed. So think about the purpose of this. The purpose of you using this ego is so that you can interact with the world in a very simple way. You don't need to have a Buddhist experience of total flow all the time, because life is just not like that. You need to kind of have a sort of simple view so you can just walk around and have a little bit of fun and do things simply. It's like a desktop. You lie about the state of the computer so that you can use the computer. And so what happens with jargon is that the palace of jargon, the concept mind, the prefrontal mind, the higher cognitive mind is good. It's got a lot of good stuff, but it needs to be subservient to this deeper experience, this deeper mind, these deeper parts of you. And in order for you to trigger that, you need to allow this thing to be humbled, for it to bow and say, I will serve you. You need to allow this conscious mind every now and again to allow its palace that it spent so much time building get dissolved into nothing, so that your deep mind can build it up again. Actually, the function of dreams, if you look at this very, very quickly, is you make up all these categories about people, and then the dreams dissolve these categories and put them back together. So, for example, you have a category which is your mother, and that's tied to 50, 100,000 billion memories. And they're all stringed together. And each of those memories has a little tinge of emotion. Positive, 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 bad, weird, positive, positive, bad, weird, unsure, does she like me, am I safe, these type of things. Each emotion. And then they all compress together and form this really vibrant charge. And so when you see her, there's this tinge of that charge underneath it. And that actually quite substantially informs your relationship with her. And it basically boils down to, can I trust her? Or can I not trust her? And so when you see her, you're sort of having this experience, and that might affect your mood, and you might be nicer to her, less nice to her. And maybe you can have a very, very civil conversation, be like, how you doing, Mom? That's great, blah, 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 blah. It's on the surface, the words that the conscious mind is having this, but underneath it, there's still this tension. Or it might be very, very positive. There's this great, deep love. And as you have new experiences with her, as you break down into new territories and all this, and go deeper with her, or ignore her, or something like that, these you'll add more memories to this chain that has been compressed into the category. And so the charge will change. And this is what dreams do. They open up the category, they maybe explore them, they cross-reference it with other ones, and then put it back together when you wake up. It takes, so your conscious mind builds this palace of bricks, and then your dream mind pulls it apart, updates it, sees is it correct, and then puts it back together so that you can use it again during the day. This is how your mind works. This is why you dream, I'd imagine. Now, this is a very Boyo theory, but this is just what I'm seeing from reading the evidence. And so Jung would say, for example, that individuation happens naturally, but you can encourage it along. And maybe this is what you need to understand, is that your dreaming mind will update this jargon palace naturally. It'll be very, very painful. But maybe you could do it consciously. Maybe you could let the dream mind come forward and let it destroy this. Let it destroy your palace of order, man. And then you would update faster. And maybe this is what happened with someone like Jung. Maybe he put it off. Because if you read the start of the Red Book, it's actually written in a very conscious, rational, scientific way, because that's what his habit was. And he is sort of suggesting a little bit that he might have got a bit stiff and academic and ignored this part of himself a little bit. And this is, and you get this in all of his other books. He has that technical writing style. And it's not very good. It's not very readable. Like, a lot of people who read Jung can't understand him. They can only just grapple with the words, but they can't see what he's seeing because they don't know how to use their heads this way. And so all they can do is interact with Jung at an intellectual level. But if you see this, maybe that was something going wrong with him. He's a stiff academic who cares about his reputation. And this was his experience of having that melted. And you have this experience too. And so this is one possible reason. You've got this, mechanical mind that's trying to use it, and you think this is you, but it's actually just a servant, and you need to humble it. And when you cross-wire the brain a different way, you get the exact same thing. It turns out that the left brain, and if you look at Ian McGilchrist, all right, he talks about the left brain and the right brain. The right brain is like the observing mind, and the left brain is like the using mind, the doing mind, the mechanical mind. So the left brain, the left and the right sides of the prefrontal cortex have different biases, with the left side orientated more towards approach, positive goals and emotions, and the right side specialized more in avoidance and negative emotions. It's also worth noting that the left side of the prefrontal cortex hosts more dopamine receptors activity associated with motivation and reward, while the right is greater norepinephrine activity associated with anxiety. In studies of the neural correlations of depression, it has been found that the left prefrontal cortex activity is underactive relative to right prefrontal cortex activity. So what's going on here? The left brain is making sense of the world. It's not making sense. It's making use of the world. It's using the dopamine receptors to make you motivated to go do stuff. And it has this habit of lying about the world. I've talked about this before. I have this wonderful cup in front of me, and I look at this cup and it says, my right brain perceives the cup as it is, and it sees that it's part of a chain of infinite associations. And this glass goes all the way back on some supply chain that goes back to some guy who's just working to feed his family, who's had this rich experience, and he has this whole family story. And I can see all this, and I can see the glass goes back to the factory, and it's all connected to the minerals of the earth that were stepped on by dinosaurs. And then when the when the sun exploded and created all this stuff, and that's how rich this glass has history that's billions of years deep. This is a fragment of the universe I'm holding in my hand that came out of the Big Bang. Now, what's interesting is it's also just a fucking glass. And my left brain says, shut up, you pretentious hippie right brain, and just drink. Just use the glass. Like, you just pick up the glass and it's almost like a button to the left brain. It's like, just go. That's all you got to do. Stop paying attention to it like this. And think about it this way: back in the ancient days, you would have been walking around and you would have been picking berries, and your left brain is like, pick berries, pick berries, pick berries, and your right brain is quietly not paying attention to what your left brain is doing. It's quietly just observing and saying, okay, everything's okay. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to stay out of the way. I don't need to be bothering the left brain. It's eating. It's doing well. And so you, the I, is caught up eating the berries and all this. And then the right brain detects a lion in the corner, and the lion it suddenly grabs the left brain and shoots it with negative emotion, the anxiety. It says, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And so it's been watching, even it's like the eye behind on the back of your head, and it gets all, that feeling of I am being watched. It has that power. And then the left brain shuts up, it stops doing its thing, it humbles itself, it looks over and sees the lion and runs away. And it makes you run away. The dopamine makes you run away, motivation and reward. And so it's that type of thing. The right brain is perceiving all this stuff. It's deciding what's important. And then the left brain is using this and all this. And they kind of are at war a little bit. And to understand this is to understand the division in our mind. It's the same problem of ego versus deep self. There is this strange pattern that shows up everywhere when we look into neuroscience. There's a part of us, it literally constantly starts to show up. There's a part of us that is sort of conscious in the moment, caught up in the moment, that obsesses about this arrogant conception that it's in control and thinks it's know what's going on. And then there's this other part of us that's more visual, more observant, more deep, more profound, more quiet, more humble, and has an ability to step out of the picture. And its job is actually superior. Its job is the leader. It's the introverted leader, but we've got the extroverted idiot that is the doer, like the salesman, and he needs to be humbled to this. And so an explosion like the Red Book coming in, or a visionary experience coming in, destroying your reality, is very, very similar to this experience. Probably is this experience where your left brain or your front brain or your ego, whatever concept you want to use, these are all wrapped up in the same vague blob, if you will. These all together, they make up the machine mind, the mechanical mind, and it gets arrogant, thinking that it's the real thing that exists. It thinks that it's alive. It thinks that it's the king of the castle, and it needs to constantly be shoved back into its place. And the way that the right brain does this is by literally just opening all the doors to its house and flooding it full of essentially psychedelic visions and or really intense emotions, or reality itself. When it confronts problems and realizes that it was full of shit, that's when you have the breakdown, the crisis. So here's a comfy quote by Schopenhauer, again referencing the idea of genius, high flow, the extreme high performance parts of your mind that points out the fallibility of the ego. Talent hits the target no one else can hit. Genius hits the target no one else can see. Because being able to perceive reality is far superior to being able to use a fake version of reality, a useless version of reality. The left brain could be the best archer in the room, but the right brain would be the one who can see the boar no one else can see, that type of thing.